What's up, everybody? Good morning. Happy Monday. Hope you guys are doing well. Good morning, Chi. Good morning, Jarius. Deathly G. Good morning. Hope you guys are having a good one. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Get into some analysis here today and go over my game plan this morning, what I'm watching out for this week. Good morning, Abundance. Welcome in. Good afternoon on your side. Okay. Yeah. It's morning here. People tuning in from all kinds of time zones, I'm sure. Let everybody know. Alrighty. So let's take a look first here at my report from Market AI, kind of going over the fundamentals. The big thing I'm seeing repeatedly across different things that I'm watching, mainly ES and Q, SPY, QQQ, IGV. This has been a leading sector software as far as weakness, leading to the downside, especially heavy on NQ, QQQ. And then Microsoft is the number one kind of holding of IGV. So I've been kind of watching that to see if either of these sustain a bottom and maybe start turning around. Would take a lot of downside pressure off, specifically NQ. However, kind of mixed signals all around, which is what we've been seeing. The market's been relatively sideways. Just looking at what's it saying is we've been kind of holding higher lows, kind of working our way up. So neutral to bullish biases kind of across the board, across multiple time frames. As far as news, check out the economic calendar. Just looking at medium and high, we have a few things coming out today. We have the factory orders month over month. I kind of don't give that a ton of weighting. We'll see what happens. It could. Tomorrow, consumer confidence at 10 a.m. So that's a bigger one. And then on Wednesday, let's see, a few different node auctions on Wednesday. I think, and then the crude, if anyone here trades crude, that'll be a bigger impact for them. And then Thursday, Friday, we have more heavier hitters with jobless claims on Thursday and PPI on Friday. So some slightly bigger hitters later in the week. And then tomorrow, that consumer confidence is another one that I have a star on to watch out for. So a few news things that could spark some volatility this week. The other big one that we don't have really on here is anything going on with Trump. I think he is speaking tomorrow. So we need to watch out for that. I think it's after hours, though. I could be wrong. Let me check. Is it on here? That's just the standard stuff. I think he is scheduled to speak. President Trump speaks, 2100. So after hours. So Asia session tomorrow, Tuesday. So 9 p.m. tomorrow. So we need to watch out for that. Drag this over here. Don't need that anymore. So some mixed signals overall. We need to watch out for anything coming out as far as Trump speaks today at 9 a.m. I don't have that one as a significant speech, but it could be. What was I saying? We need to watch out for any escalations with the tariff stuff. You guys know the courts struck down the tariffs that Trump had previously imposed, and then he immediately responded with another executive order for global 15% tariffs. So the market's going to be really sensitive to that. So far, it's just kind of been up and down because I don't think much has changed fundamentally just yet. I think the markets are still kind of processing that. So from a fundamental perspective, the big things that I'm seeing right now that have a heavy potential impact is anything with the tariffs. Obviously, that's been kind of the theme of the last, since this presidency, really. So anything that sparks, especially with the courts and Trump, that comes out as far as that we need to be mindful of. And then obviously the other big elephant in the room is any escalations between the US and Iran. So some geopolitical tensions there as well. So we need to watch out for anything that comes out as far as that goes fundamentally. Other than that, mostly technical stuff that I'm watching today. Like I said, there's some more higher impact news coming out this week. So I'll get into the charts here for the technicals to talk about my game plan. I kind of just will talk about this briefly from a higher time frame. Let's take a look at ES here on the daily. So looking at the daily time frame, you can see basically since like October, November of last year, the market's essentially been sideways, right? So we've been up and down, some decent ranges, some decent volatility, but we've been relatively sideways, especially recently between like 6,800 and 7,000 on ES, S&P 500 futures. You can see every time we've got to these highs around 7,000, it's been resisted. And every time we've got to these lows around 6,800 or even slightly above, it's been resisted as far as buyers resisting, breaking down further. We also have this key area around 6,600 from a couple months ago, which was also similarly supported when the market was kind of trading in this range. We broke out a little bit above and then immediately kept going sideways in this range here, right? So a lot of sideways up and down price action, lack of continuation, which is also kind of translated to a lot of intraday whippy action, right? So in my observations, when the market is this sideways, even on the higher time frames, it often leads to kind of whippy sideways action intraday. We'll have occasional imbalance moves like from the top to the bottom of this range, followed by a lot of whippy sideways action. We'll get one move down, one move up, and then a lot of whippy sideways action. So that has been something that I have been watching out for. Specifically this month, my trade frequency has gone way down as I kind of sit back and kind of wait for extremes, wait for kind of A+ opportunities, and do my best to avoid getting chopped up in the conditions we've seen over the last month or two. So that's the daily time frame. Again, these are kind of the macro key areas that I'm watching, around 7,000 and around 6,800. Anything in between, want to watch out for fake outs, mean reversions, etc. Especially as we kind of zoom in here to the last 2 weeks or the last week. Essentially, we had one large drop 2 weeks ago. And then since then, we've kind of been grinding slightly higher, but mostly just all inside this tight block here. And that's near the middle of this higher time frame range around 6,900 here as well, at least where we're currently at. So we're near the middle of this higher time frame range that we've been in, and we've been consolidating very sideways in the middle of that range. All right, so very, very whippy sideways action here. Take a look at NQ. One sec, let me drop this in my chat here. All right, so take a look at the daily on NQ here. Good morning, SMB Financial. Welcome in, man. Welcome in. So similarly to the stuff that I'm watching on ES, with the exception of NQ has been slightly relatively weaker, and mostly that's due to kind of the sector weakness of software. That's why I've been watching IGV. We've seen a lot of weakness in that specific sector, which is kind of forced some relative weakness on NQ compared to ES. Now, similarly, higher time frame, this area, around 26,000 has been key resistance that we've seen tested. 1, 2. This is a daily time frame as well, right? So see how much that's been resisted 3, 4 times on a macro visual, but really that was 1, 2, 3, 4 4 or 5 days resisted here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days it resisted here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each time we've spent 5 or 6 days trying to break out of this and then ultimately rejected and did that multiple times here, right? And to the lows, you can see kind of this whole area. Actually, let me just draw a box here. This whole area around these lows, kind of 24,400 to 24,600, 24,800. This whole general area down here has been supported, once, twice, above there 3 times, 4 or 5, a bunch of times right here. Now, something I was watching for last week was this to potentially break down, just because how NQ has been relatively weak. And we spent a lot of time last week kind of consolidating right at the lows here, whereas ES was kind of consolidating a little bit more in the middle of this higher time frame range. NQ is consolidating a little bit more right at the lows of this higher time frame range. However, it's still been supported. We've seen an immense amount of aggressive buyers defending these lows on both ES and NQ, which I'll get to momentarily as we drop down into lower time frame charts. But just wanted to give you guys this macro visual. This is how I always like to start off the day, is just kind of looking at daily and 4-hour time frames to get a picture of where we're at overall. So we're kind of towards the lows of this higher time frame range on NQ, a little bit more in the middle of this higher time frame range on ES. Both of them, though, pretty whippy action, sideways action, kind of middle of the range action. Pause for a question here. D-Boss asks, good morning, Matt. I see you mostly can't come up with levels on the tape when the market opens. What do you see on book that makes you mark a price range as a key level you're paying attention to? That's something that I go over extensively in my private mentorship group. I've gone over similar things. If you check out the video that I posted on YouTube, Intro to Order Flow Trading, that was an excerpt taken from a live training session that I did for free. And I cover some of the things that I look for as far as absorption and things like that. So I'd recommend checking that out. Or I've covered similar things in a lot of the live streams that I've done for free on YouTube. So I'd check that out. But generally, I look for large periods of absorption. I'm looking at the size and speed of orders on the tape. All right, so let's drop this in here. All right, so the next thing I'm going to take a look at is this range that we've been in, just taking a zoom in that I just talked about, that range on ES and NQ that we've been in for the last week or so. And so what we're looking at now is ES. This is a 4-hour chart with a volume profile drawn from basically the start of this sideways range, where we had that large sell-off 2 weeks ago. I started it there and then drew this volume profile across the last week or so. And you can see when we take a look at just this range from this perspective, you can see how we've developed a bell curve volume profile. That's something I typically watch out for, right? In trending moves, I'll look for wavier volume profile patterns and look for key areas based on supply and demand within that. In balance ranges, I often look at bell curve distributions of volume, where we see a lack of participation in the auction at the highs and the lows, which typically aligns with the value area for highs and lows. And typically in those conditions, we see mean reversions, right? And that's kind of exactly what we're seeing here on this macro visual of the last couple weeks of action. You can see the point of control here, kind of around 68.80s, the high of this value area just above 6,900, and the lows of this value area down under 68.40s. Right, let me clean this up. Right, so I like this visual to kind of filter out some noise here and focus on what really is going on, right? So specifically, we have this area, which was aggressively defended by sellers a few times here, right? This was previously kind of a low volume node from this large sell-off, right? That's where an area where sellers were just, for the uninitiated as far as order flow trading, that's just an area where sellers have been very, very aggressive, right? So we were watching that area and we can see how it rejected a couple times now. Now to the downside, this area specifically around like 68.60 plus or minus a little bit, we've seen a ton of very large aggressive buying on the order flow for the last couple of weeks now. Every time we've come around that, plus or minus a few, right? I'll give it some, you can see all the wicks under there here on the 4-hour chart. But we've just seen an immense amount of large aggressive buy orders hitting under there. And that's translated to all these wicks every time we've dipped down there, right? So that's a kind of a key area near the lows of this balance range as well, right? Near the lows of this value area. So what does all this mean? I'm really trying to avoid kind of getting chopped up here. Really this whole value area inside here, right? I'm really trying to avoid getting chopped up in here, right? Between like 68.60 and 6,900. Inside of that, I'm very cautious about getting just chopped up in sideways action, right? Now, if we start to get significant momentum above this area here, above 6,900, I may, kind of like what I was starting to look for on Friday, look for buyers to show strength that we might go break this out. So I may scalp this long if I see significant momentum and strength from buyers to go and break out the highs of this balance range, right? Ideally, I would like to see that confirmed with large aggressive buying kind of breaking out, and look for an area of low volume or an area of large delta that confirms large and aggressive strength and momentum from buyers breaking that out, and then long a pullback targeting kind of a continuation of that breakout, right? This last area up here, we can see where price consolidated and dropped. That was around that, 6980 to 7,000 area that I talked about, which has been that higher time frame highs of the balance range. So I'd probably look to use that area as a target if buyers get really strong and break out of this. To the flip side, if sellers manage to break this down and I see significant strength from sellers, then I may look, if confirmed, let me redraw this. If we really break down the lows of this balance range and reject pops back into it, right, then I may look for a short scenario to break out of this balance range and probably target a breakdown of like 6,800. Now, on the flip side, and much more likely to occur, is if we continue to balance and I see fake outs where we fail to break the highs or lows of this range, then I'll look for kind of quick in and out scalps to fade the extremes and target mean reversions back to the middle. That is continuing to be the best play in these conditions, is not exposing yourself for a significant amount of time, looking for failures at the extreme for quick scalps back towards the middle. The highest probability piece of that move is this, right? Where we see a failed break of the extreme confirmed, by aggressive participants recapturing. We find a scenario where we have another failed pop into the highs, and then basically just take that trade from like there to there back towards the middle. Oftentimes, if you try to hold for a break of the complete other extreme, you may get that. Or, as you can see here, if you maybe caught it here, you would have been stopped break even, after we kind of bounced off the middle back up to the highs. Maybe you probably would have trailed your stop break even. You probably would have got stopped there. So generally, the best probability piece of moves like this in these conditions for mean reversions is exactly that. Is, once we identify a significant failure of a breakout, target, a break back to the middle. And I'm looking at this more on the higher time frame here, specifically because it kind of eliminates a lot of the noise of the intraday action that we've seen lately. And let me show you another chart here. And this is what I mean. This is what I typically look at, which is a 30-minute chart of the intraday volume profiles. And you can see just how absolutely sideways this has been. We had this drop here, right? And since then, we've been pretty much totally sideways in this range. And you can see there's not a lot of clean action as far as volume profiles. See a little bit of bounce there, dipped under it, back to the highs, back to the lows, back to the highs, right? So I'm just kind of taking all that noise away right now and just looking kind of at the extremes of this range that we've been in, right? And you can see, let me get rid of this stuff now. You can see towards the lows of this range, we balanced down here, right? And you can see that point of control from that substantial balance range. Yeah, we did a fake out dip and recovery over it, right? That was typically bullish, but then we came back to the highs and look at these balance ranges that formed at the highs that then ultimately rejected, right? So if we look at these points where the market got really balanced and then rejected, it's kind of formed the extremes of the highs and lows of this range. Now, despite all that, we have seen buyers continue to hold kind of higher lows here, you can see, right? But just because that we've kind of in this shorter time frame been holding higher lows, I don't necessarily look at that as we're in like bullish trading conditions, right? But it is an observation, right? Especially if we continue to build volume at these highs and buyers continue to show aggression and strength, then that may add confluence if we get strength up there for a breakout to long a breakout and target, these previous areas. Yeah, Jasmine, that 4-hour chart that I showed you was the full day volume profiles. Go back to that. And yeah, this was the full day volume for each day, right? Everything on the chart. And I'll show the game plan is the same for NQ, but I'll just show you the same thing, what it looks like, so you guys can kind of see. I'm not going to recover the whole game plan here. It's the same. Just looking at NQ, you can see kind of the top of this value area that is just above 25,000 here. That's hang on, that line sucks. Top of this value area, just above 25,000, that's rejected multiple attempts to break out. The bottom of this value area, again, this is just where 70% 10th percentile of the volume has been transacted. And you can see that on the bell curve here, right? So this is where buyers and sellers are most agreeing on price, right? We've been up and down in there. There's really no edge in terms of the auction to one side or the other. You can see the lack of continuation both above and below, lack of participation in the auction. So we continue to see kind of the mean reversion conditions in the middle, right? And point of control is right now around 24,800 of this range from the last couple of weeks, right? So similar to what I talked about before, kind of watching these extremes to kind of target mean reversions. And if we see substantial strength, especially now that we've kind of been holding higher lows, that breaks out, then I may be open, to longing a breakout above 25,000, probably targeting, 25,300 to 400 range. Same thing to the flip side. If sellers really break out, and this could be today or this could be this week. I'm not necessarily saying today, but this is kind of my game plan going forward this week. Until structure changes, I don't see much reason to change the game plan going forward this week, as long as we continue to have the same structure where we have all this consolidation in this range. Yeah, you can do that. if you, so hang on, copy this. The Andy explains, hey, Matt, new here, can ask a question on Tradevate. Are you able to draw a volume profile for certain candles only? Yeah, that's exactly what I did on my Tradevate here. So if you look here, you can go to the drawing tools here and click volume profile, and you can draw the volume profile. You click and click for exactly where you want to draw the volume profile. That's what I did to draw it on that whole range there. Just use the drawing tools and you can draw the volume profile specifically over which candles that you want. I drew it over those 4-hour candles from that full range from the last couple weeks. Yeah, no problem. All right, guys. So that is the game plan. That's the analysis for this this Monday and kind of going forward. That's kind of the higher time frame stuff that I'm watching out for this week. If you guys enjoy this and get value out of this, I'll continue to do pre-market streams this week. And for those of you that are in the private coaching group that I run, Flipping Futures, we will be live as usual for the trading session in the Discord and WAP. So if you guys are interested, this is not a big sales pitch or anything, but the link is in the description if you guys are interested in joining that. But if you guys get value out of this and this helps you guys start your day, you know, I'm kind of gauging participation here from people to see if it's kind of worth my time to kind of jump on in the pre-market to help you guys go through analysis and stuff like that. So if you guys get value out of this, then I'll keep doing it. Thanks, Mohammed. Appreciate that. Yeah, if you guys get value out of this, the best way to let me know is here in the comments on this and drop a like on the live stream. That helps me kind of gauge the feedback from people participating, if it's kind of, you know, worth going through analysis and everything, if everybody's getting value out of it. But I appreciate everyone taking their time this morning to go through here with me. Yeah, there's a few discount codes in the link as well. If you guys, the thing that I share a lot on my live streams is Bookmap. This is my preferred order flow analysis tool. There's a discount link in the description down below. TradeZella that I like to use to track data and journal trades. There's a discount link in the description below. And Market AI, which I like to use, is for kind of my news and fundamental analysis. There's a discount link for that down below. Again, I don't, you know, shill, you know, kind of props or different stuff that, you know, there's a million things that I could share to try to like make a buck off online, but I really don't do that. The only stuff that I share, discount codes and stuff for that, is stuff that I personally use myself, that I get value out of myself, that I personally pay for. Like I don't share anything here that I don't personally pay for and use myself in my trading. Right. So if you guys like those tools, if you find value in them, then I have discount codes in the description. Right. That's all. Yeah, I think that's a wrap, guys. Sounds like a lot of people are interested in continuing to do these streams and get value out of it. So I'll jump back on here tomorrow and maybe we'll keep up with it this week. And maybe I'll make this a regular thing, doing pre-market streams here if I get a lot of participation and people are actually getting value out of this. So if you guys have questions, the best way to reach me is just send me a DM on Instagram. And obviously for anyone that's in Flipping Futures, you guys have pretty much 24/7 access to DM me questions and stuff. So you guys know. I'll see you guys that are in Flipping Futures over on the live stream there for the live trading session. But that's going to be a wrap. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow for the pre-market stream. Thanks, guys. Peace.